I secretly married a Wall Street tycoon named Ethan. He's uptight and abstinent. I'm glamorous and charming. Despite our differences, our married life was harmonious. Later, at my sister's welcoming party, I noticed Ethan secretly looking at her 4 times. That's when I realized that when a man truly loves a woman, he can't hide his burning passion. I left divorce papers behind and left New York overnight. 2 years later, I ran into Ethan with my half-blooded baby girl. That night, he cornered me outside my apartment. "Wendy, I looked into the foreign guy you were with. He's not as tall, muscular, or big as me. Why don't you give it another shot with me? Let's have a daughter. She'll definitely be prettier than your mixed one." After secretly marrying Ethan, I often sighed to my bestie about how well I was living. At the office, he wore business attire, stern and serious, hardly ever smiling. With his cold and abstinent vibe, topped with a flawless face. Several times when he kissed me in his suit, my legs went weak. But at the office, I was just his little secretary. Ethan is very professional, keeping business and personal life separate. So much so, that not a single person out of hundreds of eyes ever suspected anything between us. Like now, even as he sternly scolds me with a cold face, I almost forget he's my husband. After the reprimand, feeling wronged, I was ready to leave with the others. But Ethan stopped me. "Wendy, stay back." Everyone gave me a good luck look and slipped away. Standing in front of Ethan's desk, I felt a bit angry. Earning $8,000 a month, but still getting scolded. "Mr. President, what do you need?" Ethan closed his pen, took off his gold-rimmed glasses, and put them aside. Then he looked at me. "Wendy, come here." I wanted to refuse with dignity, but my eyes couldn't leave his face. Perhaps the high-intensity work made him slightly weary. Leaning against the chair back, his usually upright posture seemed a bit relaxed. His suit open, revealing the slim, muscular waist wrapped in a dark grey shirt. My mind couldn't help but wander to colorful thoughts, all ending up with last night's embarrassing images of me straddling him. "Are you mad?" Ethan noticed me standing still, speaking in a low tone. "You were mean to me earlier." I glared at him, but most of the anger was already gone. Once I reached his side and he pulled me onto his lap. Feeling his firm abs, the remaining irritation vanished. "Shouldn't I criticize you for sending the wrong file?" Ethan gently rubbed my earlobe. "Does it still hurt?" It was a new piercing I got before our wedding, causing inflammation for days. So tender I couldn't touch it. It stopped hurting a while ago. Nestled against his chest, I felt pacified like a cat, no temper left. Sincerely apologizing. "I'll work diligently from now on and never make such mistakes again." "Good that you know your mistake." "Ethan." I called his name. His fingers roamed my waist, rubbing lightly. "Honey," I softly called. Ethan's Adam's apple bobbed, his gaze falling on my white shirt collar. It was the standard summer uniform for the secretary's office. The first time I wore it, it seemed a bit tight, especially around the chest. "Don't dress like this anymore." Ethan's fingers moved from my waist, slowly unbuttoning his watch. My heart tightened. "Honey, this is the office. No one dares to come in." I knew that, but when Ethan got started, it was at least 2 hours. A little secretary spending 2 hours in the big boss's office. Just imagine what others would think. "So what?" Ethan put aside his watch, already unbuttoning his shirt. I couldn't help but swallow. My gaze fixated on his chest muscles. "They'll think I'm seducing my boss. Aren't I the one seducing my little secretary?" My face flushed and heart raced. Today, I'd even mistakenly sent Ethan a book. It was about a cold and abstinent CEO seducing his little secretary. "Ethan, how can I leave later?" "Then don't." "But there's no protection here. I might get pregnant." "Wendy, we should have a child. So do you want kids?" "Yes." While responding, he lifted my knee-length skirt easily, adjusting me to straddle his waist. "Wendy, look down." I obediently lowered my head as Ethan tilted his head slightly to kiss me. From this angle, his face looked flawlessly handsome. The moment he kissed me, all my defenses crumbled instantly. If I do get pregnant, having a baby that looks like Ethan, it would definitely be good-looking and smart. I was kissed into a dizzy and disoriented state. Ethan seemed especially excited and persistent. "Wendy," midway, while kissing my collarbone, he huskily asked, "What's your motive for seducing me?" I couldn't help but widen my eyes. Is he getting too into his role? Still not gonna say. A crisp slap sound echoed suddenly. I whimpered in pain yet didn't forget to go along with it. "President, I want a raise." "Oh, how much do you want?" $200,000. I tentatively spoke. "Isn't it said that men are more agreeable in bed? Maybe if he's in a good mood, he'll actually give me that raise." Ethan's movements suddenly became heavier. "Wendy, you've got quite the appetite." I twisted my waist and looped my arms around his neck, and softly hummed, "Of course, otherwise how could I handle you, President?" When I left Ethan's office, 3 hours had already passed. He had already perked up and started handling business matters, but I felt completely drained, my face reflecting total exhaustion. Several other secretaries from the office sympathetically looked at me. Wendy, did the president punish you? Look at you, there's no spark in your eyes at all, how pitiful. The president is really ruthless sometimes. How could he bear to punish such a stunning beauty like you? I couldn't help but curse Ethan harshly in my mind. But then, thinking about how he, under my coercion, humbled himself to clean up his messy office, and even helped me with a bath, I couldn't help but generously forgive him this once. Just before leaving work, I got a call from my mom. My sister was returning home today, and my parents wanted Ethan and me to join them for dinner to welcome her back. After hanging up, I immediately texted Ethan. My relationship with my parents is just SOSO, but I'm very close with my sister. Previously, because she was abroad for medical treatment, she couldn't attend my wedding. I felt particularly regretful and even cried about it. Ethan, I'm very close with my sister. She's both gentle and sensitive, so please don't be cold to her, it might sadden her. Ethan only replied after a moment, got it. After work, I went to the garage to wait for him as usual. Once in the car, Ethan took the initiative to speak. It's our first time meeting your sister. Shouldn't we prepare a gift? Sure, we can pick something on the way. Ethan and I chose a particularly beautiful Australian white pearl necklace. My sister loves pearls the most. She has fair skin and a great temperament, perfectly suited for pearls. After joyfully explaining, I sighed. Unlike me, standing next to my sister, I look so plain. Ethan glanced at me with his calm eyes. Everyone has their strengths. You shouldn't belittle yourself. Ethan, I glared at him in frustration. Besides, on the bed, he doesn't know how to sweet talk. Because we spent time picking out the gift, by the time we arrived, everyone else was there. As we pushed open the door, my sister immediately stood up with reddened eyes. Wendy. She hugged me, her gaze slowly shifting to Ethan. She smiled gently, yet beautifully. So this is Ethan. Ethan, this is my sister, Winnie. I quickly made introductions, happily looking at the two people I care about most. Ethan looked at Winnie for a while, then softly spoke. Sister. My sister visibly froze for a moment, her expression almost on the verge of tears. I inexplicably felt the atmosphere was somewhat strange. Mom had already started smiling and guiding us to our seats. The dishes are almost all here. Let's eat first. I sat next to Ethan. His elite upbringing and impeccable table manners were evident. Ethan's family believed in the principle of not speaking while eating, but tonight, he first knocked over the soup spoon. Then he spilled soup while serving me. I noticed his distraction, but didn't know why, until his eyes uncontrollably landed on my sister again. Maybe it was a woman's intuition that made me start to feel suspicious. I looked towards my sister, but she avoided my gaze, gently lowering her head. After returning home that night, I couldn't help but ask Ethan. You seemed to look at my sister several times tonight. Did you two know each other before? Ethan glanced at me. Just college acquaintances. My heart inexplicably trembled, just as I was about to ask further. His phone suddenly rang. As he answered, his expression became increasingly serious. All right, I know, I'll head over now. Winnie, you go to sleep first. No need to wait for me tonight. I watched him put on his suit and prepare to leave. I couldn't help but ask, Ethan, it's really late. What's so important? While buttoning his shirt, he walked over and kissed me. Just something urgent. You sleep first, be good. I hugged his waist tightly. Don't go, okay? I want you to stay with me. Ethan couldn't help but smile at my pouty face, but he still gently pushed me away. Winnie, be good. I'll come back after handling it. Ethan. I softly called his name as he reached the door. He paused and looked back at me. Maybe it was the soft lighting of the room. His gaze was so tender it made me feel submerged in it. I smiled at him. Drive safe. Don't make me worry. Okay, go on. I'll go to sleep now. After saying that, I laid down. A moment later, the lights went completely dark. The sound of the door closing echoed softly. His footsteps gradually faded away. In the end, everything returned to silence. I wanted to close my eyes and sleep, but with Ethan not home, I felt completely listless. Usually at this time, he would be clinging to me, or I'd already be asleep in his arms. It's rare for him to go out suddenly in the middle of the night like this. My mind started to get all jumbled up. I decided to open my phone and browse Twitter for a bit. I saw that my sister posted a tweet an hour ago. It showed the necklace Ethan and I picked out tonight and an old class photo. And the caption read, "Memories are worth chasing." I clicked on the class photo, staring at it blankly. I immediately recognized Ethan standing in the center. Back then, They were all still in college, young and carefree. My sister in a white dress with black hair, smiling so purely. Ethan's smile was equally bright. In the almost 1 year we've been married, I've never seen him smile so happily. It felt almost unbearable. After a while, I listlessly closed Instagram. Marrying Ethan, I always thought I hit the jackpot. Since I was a kid, my parents were always cold to me, barely showing me any love. But I still grew up carefree, went to college, found a decent job, and the man I had a crush on for years suddenly proposed to me. But now, it felt like a distant, unreal dream. My sister once told me she had a boyfriend in college. He came from a well-off family, but she wasn't in good health and couldn't have kids. A fact that his family was never happy about. Eventually, she went abroad, and they seemed to have broken up. So, was that boyfriend Ethan? My phone rang abruptly, interrupting my chaotic thoughts. I hastily answered, thinking it was Ethan, and instinctively called his name, Ethan. But it was my sister's gentle voice on the other end. Winnie, is Ethan home? He just went out. I sniffled, but couldn't hold back, my voice tinged with sobs. Winnie, my sister continued. I was feeling unwell earlier, and Mom was wondering if Ethan knows any good doctors. Everything suddenly became still. What was just my speculation now seemed clearly answered. Ethan rushed out earlier, because my sister wasn't feeling well. Winnie, were you crying? Please, don't let your mind wander. No matter what, I won't take him from you. I don't remember how the call ended. I can't recall what else she said. Somehow, I drifted into a blurry sleep, only to be woken by the noise in the bedroom. Ethan had returned, packing his suitcase. Did I wake you? He asked, pausing as he walked over to the bed. He tried to kiss me like he usually did, but I pushed him away. He looked taken aback. Winnie, where are you going? An urgent business trip to Switzerland. I'll be back in 5 days at the latest. Are you going alone? Ethan chuckled, with a few assistants and high-level managers. For work, of course. He touched my face gently. Be good at home, wait for me to come back. Want any gifts? Before he could finish, I suddenly hugged him tightly. Honey, he didn't have any strange smells. Just the familiar, faint scent of aftershave. This calmed my uneasy heart a bit. What's up? Ethan kissed my cheek again. You're being so clingy. Can I go with you on this trip? Not this time. The schedule is too tight. Alright, wait till I get back. There's something I want to tell you too. He glanced at his watch. Winnie, sleep a bit more. I need to leave now. I watched as he closed his suitcase and left the room. Lying back down, I couldn't help but think about my sister's tweet. Ethan didn't deny that he knew my sister, but were they just old classmates, or something more? Posing for a photo together, they must have been close. Did Ethan once have feelings for her? That's why he was so off last night. I couldn't bear to think deeper. Just then, my sister sent me a message. Winnie, I'm heading to Switzerland today. Can you come see me off? Reading her message, I felt my blood freeze. Ethan suddenly going to Switzerland. And my sister, too. Did they plan this? He just lied to me about a work trip. If it's about work, why can't I go as his assistant? Once doubts take root, they spread like wildfire. My sister messaged again, perhaps because I didn't reply. If you don't want to see me, just forget I said anything. I stared at the text box for a long time. Eventually, I wrote back, take care. My sister didn't send any more messages. When Ethan landed in Switzerland, he called me right away. At the same time, I saw my sister's newest tweet. The IP address showed Switzerland too. They probably took the same flight. Ethan's voice remained gentle, like any caring husband. There was no trace of anything unusual, but I faintly heard a woman's voice in the background. Then he said he had to get to work and hung up. A few nights later, my sister sent me a few voice messages. Winnie, can you just let me have this one time? I've always given in to you, protected you since we were kids. This time, can you give in to me just once? She sounded like she had been drinking, her voice breaking with sobs. I sent back dully, let you what? After a long time, she finally replied, Winnie, I'm sorry. Sorry for what? I don't want to think about what kind of touching getting back together scenes are playing out in Switzerland right now. But I still masochistically texted Ethan on Instagram. What are you up to? Winnie, wait a minute, I'm busy. I didn't reply after that. I dozed off, and when I woke up, there was a video call from Ethan on my phone. I called back. Ethan's voice was as calm as always, but I couldn't hold it in anymore. I suddenly exploded. Ethan, do you think I'm a fool? Is it fun to lie to me like this? I want a divorce. As soon as you come back from Switzerland, we're getting divorced. Wendy, what is going on? Before he could finish, I hung up the phone on him. Ethan immediately called back. I was determined not to answer. I blocked all his contact info. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the large wedding photo on the bedside, sitting there for a long, long time. I remembered how I used to tell my best friend that if I couldn't have lots and lots of love, then I would need lots and lots of money. I love Ethan a lot, but if his heart belongs to someone else, then I don't want him anymore. The thought of him being affectionate with my sister in Switzerland, thinking of me as a fool, makes me both hurt and unwilling to give up. So, I'm going to spend his money recklessly. The next day, after getting my mood sorted, I called my best friend. Winnie, wait up. Your big sis is gonna hook you up with 18 male models. I'll make sure you forget about that old man Ethan. They gotta be hotter than him. Deal. And with better bodies, taller, and just better in every way. In the afternoon, my friend and I stormed into the mall and went on a shopping spree. I even used Ethan's card to buy her a luxury brand handbag. Finally, we brought all our spoils home. Since we were hitting the club that night, my friend had already prepped a killer outfit for me. But she looked a bit hesitant. Winnie, if your husband finds out I'm helping you wreck things, will he twist off my head? You're overthinking it. I picked up that tiny piece of fabric and laughed at myself. He won't care about me. Did you guys have a fight? Or did he do something to wrong you? My friend asked worriedly. I don't want to talk about him, Sarah. Alright, then we won't mention him. Just hurry up and change. Do your makeup. Let's go have a blast tonight. After changing into the dress, my friend's eyes practically bugged out. Why am I not a guy? Is it too revealing? I tugged at the deep V neckline, feeling slightly uncomfortable. This is doing the world a favor. My friend urged me to do my makeup. Hurry up. I wanna see you slay tonight. On the way to the club, I borrowed my friend's phone. We've known each other for years, and she also has my sister's Instagram. Sometimes people just like to torment themselves. I stared at my sister's profile for a long time before opening it. My sister's Twitter is set to visible for 1 month only. The latest post stayed from last week. Not that comment I saw on that night. Maybe she deleted it after our call that night. But none of that mattered anymore. I couldn't help but think of the way Ethan looked at her. That kind of emotion he wanted to suppress but couldn't. It hurt more than a direct stare. Forget it. I handed the phone back to my friend. There's no point in fighting over something like this. I felt relieved, but there was still a heavy sadness in my heart. So, someone who doesn't usually drink much, I ended up downing several glasses. They say alcohol numbs everything, but even drunk, my mind was filled with thoughts of Ethan. The guys in front of me, none as tall as Ethan, none better looking. None had his charm, his cleanliness. Even their abs weren't as nice and firm as his. My friend's phone rang like a death knell, and she staggered out to take the call. The hottest guy among the models slid into her seat next to me. Sis, are you unhappy? Let me have a drink with you. A guy in his early 20s. His eyes were still clean and clear. So, he wasn't annoying. We clinked glasses, the loud music started up again, and the young men and women crowded onto the dance floor. I stayed put, and so did the boy next to me. We chatted aimlessly, until my friend, looking strange, came back from her call. I was just about to ask why she took so long, when I saw Ethan's cold, intimidating face. Wasn't he supposed to be on a business trip in Switzerland, away for at least 5 days? Why was he suddenly here in front of me? My friend stood by with her head down, not daring to acknowledge me. Ethan had about 10 bodyguards with him. Their large group caused quite a stir as they entered. The music abruptly stopped, and the crowd on the dance floor turned to look our way in surprise. The club manager hurried over, sweating profusely. He cautiously apologized to Ethan, and then coldly ordered the boy beside me, "Get out of here." The boy seemed frightened and got up in a rush to leave. "You can't leave." I pointed at him. "You stay right here with me." Ethan's eyes darkened. "Wendy." I glared at Ethan, my eyes red. "Who are you to tell me what to do? Why didn't you manage yourself first before managing me?" After yelling, tears uncontrollably streamed down my face. Ethan walked up to me. "Wendy." His voice softened as he reached out to wipe my tears, but I smacked his hand away. He didn't get angry, just took off his jacket and draped it over me. "Don't bother me." I pushed his hand away again and threw the jacket aside. Grabbing my purse, I stumbled out. "Wendy, the divorce papers are on your desk in the study. The resignation letter is in your email." The alcohol made my head pound and I felt nauseous, but I was more afraid of breaking down and crying in front of Ethan, afraid of my barely constructed mental barrier collapsing easily. "We'll talk about this when you sober up." Ethan caught my wrist and wrapped his jacket around me again. "For now, you're coming home with me." "I'm not going home. I told you not to care about me. don't you get it? I used all my strength to push him away. Ethan's face gradually darkened. Wendy, what is your problem? I really didn't want to cry in front of him. I've never been the type to cry easily since I was a kid. But in front of Ethan, my tear ducts seem fragile. My problem? I tried hard to see the man in front of me clearly. He is my husband, the man I've had a crush on for a very long time. We have shared the most intimate things in the world, but now we are the most distant pair. It's true what they say. Spouses are the closest and also the furthest. It's too messy and noisy here. Let's go back and talk properly. There's nothing to talk about. Wendy. Ethan's eyes were full of tiredness, with noticeable red veins. I looked away, not wanting to feel soft-hearted. You go, I'll go back to Sarah's place. But Ethan didn't waste any more words with me. He grabbed my wrist and shoved me into the car. Once back in the hotel room, I took off my jacket and headed straight to the bathroom. I stayed in there for a long time. The cold water slowly cleared my mind. Maybe Ethan and I do need to have a good talk. Like the saying, better to die with clarity. When I came out of the bathroom, Ethan was half lying on the sofa, seemingly asleep. I slowly walked to him. His eyes were closed, breathing shallow. I couldn't help but reach out, wanting to gently touch his slightly furrowed brows. But Ethan caught my wrist. As he pulled me into his arms, scorching kisses fell all over me. I struggled a bit, but drunk and almost bewitched by him, I slowly closed my eyes. Wendy. Ethan cupped my face, deepening the kiss. He was clearly exhausted, with eyes full of weariness, but we still did it twice. He didn't have any strange smells on him. His shirt collar was clean. There were no hickeys on his neck. Only a shallow, bite mark on his collarbone from that day at the office when I bit him. I touched the bite mark, and then fiercely bit down on it again. Ethan winced in pain, but didn't push me away. He just held me tighter, his movements even more forceful. By the time it was all over, it was already very late. Neither Ethan nor I could sleep. Just after such intimate moments as husband and wife, it seemed hard to even start a quarrel. Wendy, why do you suddenly want a divorce? Ethan looked down at me. In the dim light, his eyes carried a trace of inexplicable self-mockery. Is it because of the man you had a crush on? Because he came back to find you, right? Ethan had just found out that Wendy had a crush on someone when she was in college. That man was so excellent, Wendy never dared to confess her feelings. Even in the most private of spaces, she only left vague hints. She never even mentioned his name. If Ethan hadn't seen the words Wendy wrote in her diary, he wouldn't have believed it. After all, they were really happy after getting married. But those sincere, bitter feelings of a young girl, that passionate love that could only be vented on paper, had still pained his heart. I looked at Ethan. We were so close, yet so far apart, as if we could never touch each other. I thought he cared about me and didn't want a divorce. That's why he rushed back from Switzerland. But it turned out it wasn't. Yes, I did have a crush on someone. I have loved him for many years, since my sophomore year in college. Then why did you agree to marry me? Because I thought he wouldn't like me. Because I thought we could never be together in this life. I pushed Ethan away and got out of bed to get dressed. I didn't want to stay with him another minute, and I didn't want to see him again. Wendy, I'm sorry, I only found out now. I'll let you go, Wendy. I closed my eyes, tears streaming down. After you sign the divorce papers, send them to me. Okay. After the divorce, I decided to go abroad to study. When I had to return to New York for work again, it had been 2 whole years. I didn't expect to run into Ethan on my first day back in New York. But it wasn't my fault. New York is full of wealthy people. Who knew how many businesses Ethan owned? The hotel I stayed at happened to be one of his chain hotels. At first, neither Ethan nor I saw each other. It was the person next to him who noticed me first. And then, they saw Angel in my arms. He must have been surprised and instinctively called Ethan's name. When Ethan turned around, I felt a dizzying moment. But his gaze quickly moved away. His face was still handsome, but more mature and cold. As I carried Angel into the elevator, I vaguely heard, "Let's go, out of sight, out of mind." It was Ethan's voice, calm and emotionless. That night, it snowed heavily in New York. Angel was not used to the weather here. It was too cold outside, warm and dry inside. She ate too many fruits. By 8 or 9 in the evening, she started feeling unwell. I called the front desk for a thermometer. Sure enough, she had a fever. After changing her clothes and getting everything ready, I took her downstairs to the hospital. But as soon as we got out of the elevator, we ran into Ethan in the lobby. He looked at me and then at Angel. "She's not feeling well." I nodded anxiously, she's got a fever. Ethan didn't say anything. He just reached out to take the limp Angel lying in my arms. It's snowing, hard to get a cab. I'll take you to the hospital. Angel was whimpering and crying in discomfort. At that moment, I couldn't think of anything else. I had no choice but to let him carry Angel and drive us to the hospital. It was chaotic when we got there. Angel was burning up and delirious, clutching my hand and constantly calling for her mom. Angel, sweetie, it'll be okay soon. Be good. The fever will go away after the shot. My heart ached, and I got angry thinking about her irresponsible dad. Back home, all he did was fool around with his wife, leaving the child to me, her godmother. If Angel wasn't so sweet and adorable, I wouldn't have taken up this thankless job. Where's her dad? Fooling around. I didn't even look up. Ethan frowned and looked at me. Wendy. I snapped back to reality, wanting to explain, but Angel started crying again. I had no choice but to hold her and continue comforting her. Ethan got up and walked out. Actually, Angel doesn't have a mom. Her dad used a surrogate agency abroad. Her dad likes men, especially Asian men. So, Angel is a mix of East and West. Black hair, blue eyes, stunningly beautiful. When Angel's fever finally broke, it was already very late. Seeing her sleeping soundly, I felt relieved. But as soon as I stepped out of the room, Ethan grabbed my wrist and pinned me against the wall. Wendy, I looked up that foreign guy just now. He's nothing special. Not as tall, not as strong, definitely not as big as me. How about giving me another chance? Ethan was actually being kind. Angel's dad isn't just not as tall or strong. He's more like a delicate, pretty, and frail girl. If we had a daughter, she'd definitely be prettier than that mixed little girl. Ethan's eyes were intense, staring at me. He's very tall, and in the past couple of years, he's become even more imposing. I started to reminisce about the past. Honestly, our married life wasn't all that bad. Sometimes I almost couldn't believe it, that I had such a history with Ethan, so serious and stern. How do you know for sure we'd have a daughter? Besides, you're the only son of the Ethan family. Your parents would prefer a grandson, right? After all, they do have a fortune waiting to be inherited. I have no preference for boys or girls, but I think if it were a girl like you, she'd be adorable. Ethan brushed a strand of my wavy hair aside. Won't you reconsider? Time was pressing earlier, so Ethan only got some basic info on that man. But one thing was clear, Wendy and he weren't married. She's single, and that little girl is over 2 years old. Clearly not Wendy's child. He suspected that man wasn't Wendy's crush. Her taste didn't seem to lean towards that type. But if that guy could, why couldn't he? Ethan. He didn't think he was any worse than that makeup-wearing, pink-loving guy. I couldn't help but laugh at myself and pushed him away. Ethan, am I just a cheap surrogate to you? My sister can't have a child, so I have to bear one for her. What does this have to do with your sister? Ethan looked puzzled. I laughed in anger. Yeah, nothing to do with my sister. It's all because you want it. Wendy, are you misunderstanding something? What could I misunderstand? You like her, don't you? Like her? Ethan laughed like he heard a joke. Wendy, did Angel's fever affect you too? I don't have a fever. I'm very clear-headed. Actually, I knew the day Angel came back 2 years ago. Knew what? That you like her. That's absurd. If you don't like her, why'd you sneak glances at her so many times in one night? Why so flustered that you dropped your spoon and spilled the soup? Ethan pulled me to the side and sat down. Let's go over this one by one. No need. We're divorced. No relationship. No need for explanations. So, you divorced me because you think I like your sister. I didn't respond. I think I need to explain. Your sister and I have no relationship. Really? I admit I glanced at her several times at the welcome dinner, but I was just surprised and curious, trying to confirm something. What were you trying to confirm? I couldn't imagine how this could turn around. I had a close childhood friend, Sean. A few years ago, he said he was going abroad to find his girlfriend and then he disappeared. The girlfriend he was looking for was your sister. We all met in college. I widened my eyes. I knew my sister had a relationship before. Because of her health, they had to break up. But I always thought it was Ethan. Later, friends abroad said Sean had a huge argument with your sister before losing contact. After the fight, Sean drove away from your sister's place, but the trail ended there. The police made no progress. They suspected your sister. Ethan nodded slightly. The family suspected her, and so did a few of us. But later, the family sent people to investigate, and your sister, being sick, spent half the year in the hospital. She couldn't have committed a crime. Your sister and I were just college classmates, and we hadn't seen each other for years. So, seeing her that night surprised me, and I couldn't help but observe her. So that's why I glanced at her several times. As for dropping the spoon and spilling the soup, it's because seeing your sister reminded me of Sean. Ethan had a look of unmistakable pain and daze on his face. We don't know if he's alive or dead these past few years. Every time we think of him, we're saddened. Ethan, do you also suspect my sister was involved? I can't believe my sister would be mixed up in something like this. Wendy, actually back then, your sister confessed to me, but I didn't have romantic feelings for her, so I turned her down. About 6 months later, she and Sean started dating. Because of my relationship with Sean, I never told anyone about her confession, not even Sean. Ethan, I grabbed his sleeve. 2 years ago, on the night of my sister's welcome home party, you left home after you came back, saying you had something urgent. Did you go see my sister? Ethan thought for a moment and quickly shook his head. No, how could I meet your sister privately? Sean's mom called me, saying they received a strange phone call. They suspected it was related to Sean and asked me to come over. Why didn't you tell me at the time? Because Sean's parents were telling everyone that Sean had immigrated abroad. They didn't want any unpleasant rumors to spread. So, I never mentioned it to you. Suddenly, everything became clear to me. That night, my sister deliberately lied to me, saying Ethan went to see her. Everything that happened afterward, she either intentionally or unintentionally guided me to misunderstand. And I, because of my guilt and trust in her from childhood, never once doubted her. But why would she do this to me? Because she still couldn't let go of Ethan. She still liked him. Then why was she with Sean? A few days later, Angel was discharged from the hospital. Ethan was supposed to take us back to the hotel, but then got a call from Sean's mom. She was very excited on the phone, saying Sean had just called her. She was sure it was Sean's voice. Ethan didn't delay and immediately notified a few close friends to go to Sean's house. Just as he left, I also received a call from my sister. She had just returned to the country and wanted to meet. Angel was being taken care of by her dad, so I felt assured. After reminding them about the medicine, I went to meet my sister. As soon as I got in the car, my sister handed me a cup of milk tea, my favorite taro, and red bean flavor. The straw was thoughtfully placed, just like before. Since childhood, my sister knew all my preferences. She loved and tolerated me. It was a way of making up for the emotional shortcomings from our parents. Drink it while it's hot. It'll warm you up in this cold weather. My sister's voice was as gentle as always. Holding the milk tea, I took one sip and felt a lump in my throat. Why? I mumbled a question. My sister seemed stunned. Wendy, what did you say? Why did you lie to me? I trusted you so much, relied on you. Why did you lie to me, mislead me, to suspect Ethan? My sister's pale face slowly twisted into a strange smile. So, you figured it out, Wendy. Sister, if he liked you too, if you both were in love, I would have gladly stepped back. Exactly. Why doesn't he like me? Why does he like my sister, but not me? Why can his best friend fall in love with me, but he feels nothing? Sister, I felt dizzy, the world spinning before my eyes. The milk tea in my hand spilled to the ground, my awareness beginning to blur. Wendy, I don't want to hurt you. Since you've divorced him, why come back? Sean is also. I dug my nails into my palm, trying not to pass out, but I couldn't resist the effect of the drug. So what if it was me? He kept saying he loved me, would do anything for me. I agreed to marry him, only wanting to fulfill a pre-wedding wish. I just wanted to spend one last night with the man I loved, but Sean wouldn't allow it. I've never seen Winnie like this. She was always gentle, never lost her temper, always graceful and beautiful. But now, her face was contorted, like a madwoman. Why do you get to live healthily, have everything I've dreamt of? Wendy, do you know how jealous I am of you? Do you know? Just thinking about my sister lying next to the man I love night after night drives me crazy. I met him first. Everyone liked me, said I was better than you. So why wants you and not me? Just because my health is poor, that I can't have kids. Wendy, anyone can marry him, but not you. Sister, don't call me sister. We are not blood related. Mom and Dad adopted you because they were afraid I would die. But unfortunately, I didn't die. Winnie smiled at me. But now, you're going to die, Wendy. What are you going to do? Winnie didn't answer me. She started the car, driving through the snowy fog ahead. But this time, she wouldn't succeed in selling me to that hellish place like she did with Sean years ago. After Ethan told me those things at the hospital that day, I started being cautious. Today, before heading to the appointment, I texted Ethan. In the middle of Winnie's car exchange, Ethan showed up with the cops and stopped her. Winnie lost it and crazily floored the gas pedal, aiming to ram Ethan's car. I thought I was going to die. But right before the crash, maybe out of survival instinct, Winnie slammed the brakes. Ethan and I got minor injuries, but Winnie was badly hurt. While Winnie was in the ER, Ethan and I got patched up. We looked at each other, both kinda dazed. After the head injury, a ton of fragmented info hit me. Just now, I managed to piece it all together. Turns out, we're all characters in a novel. And that novel is the exact story I accidentally sent to Ethan. That's why everything's been so surreal. Because of a ridiculous misunderstanding, Ethan and I got divorced. According to the plot, Ethan and I would stay silent and misunderstand each other for 100 chapters. Then Winnie would sell me, and I'd meet a bunch of other guys. After all kinds of drama, I'd reunite with Ethan and live happily ever after. Winnie would end up dying tragically. But now, the plot has taken a huge twist. Looking at Ethan's expression, I could tell he understood the bizarre situation too. Wendy. Ethan's eyes held a hint of something I couldn't quite place. He pulled me into his arms. You won't run into these other guys anymore. With the plot twist, they shouldn't show up, right? Sean's call was real. He barely managed to escape and cross the border back home. His family already picked him up. After stabilizing, Winnie was taken by the police. The investigation wasn't tough. Winnie quickly confessed everything. Besides Sean, there were other girls and even a few social media influencers. They all got lured and sold by her. During her treatment abroad, she met a wealthy man. Initially, he targeted her, but because of her frail health, she escaped. Yet, she got stuck in the dark world of crime, becoming his tool. Winnie was very remorseful. She called me once from prison. Realizing she's the villain in the story, she said, Wendy, I'm so sorry, whether in the story or now, I'm sorry. We're sisters. This shouldn't have happened. It's too late now. I hurt so many people. I deserve this. Let me atone for the stories, Winnie. Wendy, I hope you and Ethan are happy. If you see Sean and the other girls, please pass on my apologies. Wendy, will you believe I'm not as evil as the story paints me? Around Christmas, Ethan's company planned a break. Everyone in the secretariat was thrilled with their gifts. Hey Wendy, Ethan seems extra cheerful lately. Like, something good happened. No kidding. You don't know what we've been through these past 2 years. Good thing you were on sick leave, or you would have had it bad. Ethan's been moody, more like unbearable. We seriously thought he was off, maybe because he didn't have a girlfriend. The chatter stopped abruptly. I looked up to see Ethan standing outside the office. Everyone went silent. Wendy, my office, now. He sounded all businesslike, then turned away. My colleagues looked at me sympathetically. Sighing, I got up to follow. Wendy, be sharp. Don't get in trouble again. Yeah, Ethan used to pick on you a lot, but he's been in a good mood lately. Shouldn't be too harsh. I still remember Wendy leaving Ethan's office, looking completely defeated. Guys, stop. Face red. I hurried out, silently cursing Ethan. How many times has he read that novel? He's taking this too seriously. I opened Ethan's office door and faced the man behind the desk. Ethan, Wendy. He motioned me over. I walked up and glared at him. Ethan, are you trying to make a move on me? He actually grinned. Only you. Do you agree? No way. I turned away, pretending to leave. He's been acting weird lately. Any guy around me, he gets suspicious. As if male secondary characters could appear out of nowhere. He'd rather lock me up at home. Wendy, come here. Ethan pulled out a box. I froze at the sight. It was our wedding rings. My eyes teared up. Ethan, I thought you threw everything out, thinking I loved someone else. Come here. Wendy, holding back tears, I walked over. Ethan took my hand and slipped the ring back on. Wendy, happy 3 years. I love you. I suddenly realized today was our 3rd wedding anniversary. Now, everyone will know we've been married all along. Wendy, you're mine. I won't let any guy get close to you. Stop worrying. We're way past that crazy plot. I gently chided, my fingers shaking as I put his ring on. Ethan, there's something I need to tell you. What is it? I sat on his lap, lightly hugging his waist. As he kissed me, I whispered in his ear. Ethan, the person I wrote about in my diary, the one I loved, has always been you. You're the only one I've ever loved. In the past, now, and always.